Hung up a man, the same murder three. Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Raimundo Rios Mayo Library in Arkanasa. And welcome to the show. Today is April 29th, 2017, and there are some strange things going on in the studio today that I'm not aware of. Apparently Arturo and my wife have conspired to do something, and so the entire studio has been changed, moved around, refigured, and I'm still trying to get used to it. So if something doesn't go correctly, it's because I'm still trying to figure out what's going on here.
Happy birthday.
Arturo just said happy birthday, even though it was like 2 weeks ago. Like I said, someday they're going to fill me in on what's going on here. So tonight's show, Season 2, episode number 17, is going to be about the Loch Ness Monster. However, before we get started on that, I just thought I would come out with something to really make your skin crawl. The following comes from Sabina Ethal. Have you ever had the urge to climb a mountain? Not just any mountain, but the biggest and baddest mountain on Earth. I'm talking about Mount Everest in the Himalaya mountain range. Despite the risks, thousands swarm to Nepal every year in an effort to conquer the tallest point on Earth. First, you'll need to fly to Nepal, and you'll have to purchase your climbing gear. Lots of warm stuff to fight off the freezing cold temperatures, as well as the horrendous winds. You're going to need a guide, so go join one of the dozens of expeditions that will soon be heading up to what is affectionately called Base Camp. From there, things get interesting. Now, Base Camp looks more like a mass of tents set up in just about any way possible. Some are small, intended for one person to get some sleep in, while others are huge, with TVs and full restaurant settings. The folks who pay to go climb a mountain expect to be treated like royalty. I, for one, think watching TV on the side of a mountain is a whole lot of odd. We don't even have a TV in our RV. When we go camping, we are there to camp, not to do the things we do while we're at home. Now, Base Camp is set up for a reason. If you ascend the mountain, the air pressure decreases. I'm not going to get all scientific, just go with it. So the higher up you go, the more your body has to do in order to keep you alive. Okay, you've allowed your body to acclimatize, and it's time to head to the top of the world. The Sherpas, who make this trek all the time, carry tanks filled with oxygen. You're going to need it. Even though you're acclimatized, you're going to reach a place known as the dead zone. If you don't use supplemental oxygen, you will die. Be sure to thank the Sherpas for helping you stay alive. As you enter the dead zone, you're going to notice a landmark that just about everybody gets to see. His name is Green Boots. Green Boots received his name because of the bright green hiking boots he was wearing the day he died. His body is frozen solid, lying under a small outcrop of rock where he stopped to try to get warm. His arms are wrapped around his torso in the last-ditch effort to survive. His identity is uncertain, but some believe his name was Sawang Paljor, who had been part of a high-class Indian expedition trying to summit Everest. The expedition only had one survivor. Frances Arnstev and her husband Sergei were avid climbers who sought to conquer Everest in 1998. They had a weird desire to climb the mountain without the use of supplemental oxygen. As your body becomes starved of oxygen, your ability to do any kind of physical or mental work diminishes. This caused the couple to fall behind their fellow hikers, and they didn't reach the summit until late in the day. Once they clomb up to the top of the world and had a look around, it was time to get the heck back down. But night was fast approaching, along with the deathly cold. Somewhere along the trail down, Sergei discovered his wife was no longer with him. He made it as far as Camp 4 before realizing she was not there either. He grabbed an oxygen bottle and a medical kit and then headed back up to look for her. While accounts vary, on May 23rd, a Uzbek team found Frances half alive and unable to move on her own. They carried her down as far as they could until their own oxygen ran out, and they had to leave her. The simple effort of carrying her body was too much under the extreme conditions. They wanted to make Camp 4 and send up a team to rescue her. Along the way, they passed Sergei on his way up to her. They told him where to find her and continued on their way. He was never seen again. It was Frances' final hours that cemented her legend. On May 24th, climbers Ian Woodall and Kathy O'Doyd saw a body raggedly jerking in the shadows of the first step, one of 3 steps on the northeast ridge. Frances was severely oxygen deprived, frostbitten, and still attached to her climbing line. She kept murmuring, "Don't leave me here. Don't leave me to die." The team abandoned their attempt to summit and spent over an hour trying to save her. Between the perilous location, Frances slipped into unconsciousness, and their own oxygen running out, the team made the painful decision to leave her and return to camp. For 9 years, climbers scaled around the frozen beauty who had become a part of the Everest landscape. She was called Sleeping Beauty. She was frozen solid, draped in a Canadian flag. In 2007, Woodall returned to the mountain and dropped Sleeping Beauty to a lower face, where she can slumber for eternity. No longer a summit marker for other climbers. As for her husband, Sergei is still missing, out there somewhere, looking for his wife. Now try to tell me that mountain isn't haunted. A British mountaineer, David Sharp, made his 3rd trek to the top of Everest without the aid of oxygen, radios, Sherpas, or teammates. His first 2 attempts were aborted due to perilous conditions, including from frostbite that took several of his toes. He successfully made the summit of Everest on his 3rd try, and during his descent he stopped to rest inside Green Boots' cave, mere feet from the frozen body of Green Boots himself. Being disoriented and suffering exhaustion, Sharp drew his legs up to his chest, rested his head on his knees, and he never woke up. However, David Sharp did not die right away. Over 40 climbers passed him on the mountain and noted he was still alive, but in distress. Now this sounds awful. He looks bad, but there's nothing we can do for him. Outrage poured in from around the world at the knowledge that Sharp was left, moaning and murmuring, by climbers who considered making the top of the world far more important than helping a fellow climber in distress. Sir Edmund Hillary, who, along with Tenzing Norgay, were the first pair to ever successfully summit Mount Everest, spoke out against all the mountaineers who had failed to help. The whole attitude towards climbing Mount Everest has become rather horrifying, Hillary said. A human life is far more important than just getting to the top of the mountain. We're going to take a brief pause here, play a couple of commercials, so don't go away. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Ederby Day, Suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Trike. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arkanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arkanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. Already the plot sickens. I was just talking to my wife, and it turns out that the studio rehab was a part of my birthday present, which got slightly delayed. So now everybody's running around the studio yelling happy birthday, and I'm thinking I'm in an episode of The Twilight Zone, or maybe it's an episode of Groundhog's Day, having to relive my birthday over and over. Getting back to the story. Along the Northeast Ridge route, near Everest's summit, lies a place known as the Rainbow Valley. While the name may suggest happiness and hope, Rainbow Valley is essentially a mass pit of dead bodies. The macabre scene got its name from all the vibrant colored jackets and climbing gear that are still attached to the corpses strewn on that section of the mountain. The climbers along this route can't help but notice the blatantly visible spectrum of color as they take this particular passage. Throughout the years, climbers have been known to push bodies over the mountainside into Rainbow Valley or cut the ropes of mummified corpses so that the way is less hazardous for those embarking on the trail. Now, according to Nepalese law, Everest is a sacred mountain, and any bodies are to be removed immediately. However, the dilemma lies in the fact that since it is nearly impossible to retrieve the bodies from the dead zone, the bodies must stay where they are, and Rainbow Valley will only continue to acquire more hues for its nasty palette. In 2001, a French snowboarder, Marco Siffredi, became the first person to successfully snowboard down Mount Everest, using the North Col Passage. Siffredi, who had come from a long line of mountaineers, was disappointed that he was unable to complete his actual goal of boarding down Hornbin Kolor, which he considered to be the true face of Mount Everest. Siffredi returned in 2002 at a time of year when the Hornbin would have amassed more snow in an attempt to ride down the steepest slope of all of Everest. He reached the summit in a grueling 12 hours with the aid of his Sherpa, Furba Tashi. Upon reaching the top, Furba was excited, but Safredi didn't seem to share his outlook. Safredi said he was tired. He also said there was too much snow and too much climbing. Being so late in the day, with clouds beginning to pile up, the Sherpas urged Safredi not to make the descent, but he refused to pass up a chance to conquer the holy grail of snowboarding. This was the last time Marco Safredi was ever seen. As the Sherpas were packing up Camp 3, they noticed a figure stand up and then slide down the mountain along the North Col. This was strange because Safredi would have been nowhere near the North Col. He was the only climber on Everest at the time of the year. When the Sherpas investigated the area where they had seen the figure, there were no snowboard tracks anywhere. Marcus Safredi is still out there, somewhere, frozen in time, trying to snowboard down Everest. One of the darkest times in Mount Everest is considered to be the spring of 1996. The blizzard that rolled over the mountain left devastation in its wake and took the lives of many skilled climbers. It was one of the most infamous disasters in the region, and many have heard tales of the tortured final hours of Rob Hall's expedition team. Yashuko Namba was a skilled mountaineer who was on Everest to complete the ultimate challenge of conquering the 7 summits. The Japanese climber had just reached the top and had secured the title for herself, as well as becoming the oldest woman at that time to have made the top. As the 47-year-old was embarking upon her descent, the blizzard of 96 hit. Namba and her fellow climber, Beck Weathers, along with several guides, became trapped on South Col. The whiteout conditions were so bad that no one in the party was sure where the camp was. Namba and Weathers became so weak they were unable to walk without being completely supported by their guides. And Namba weighed only about 98 pounds, and her small body mass led to her being more susceptible to hypothermia and the harsh conditions. Shortly after help came up from Camp 4 and started evacuating the trapped climbers, one of the guides assumed that Namba was dead, and they left her and Weathers behind as lost causes. A search party sent out the following day discovered Namba and Weathers were both still alive, but in horrendous condition. This rescue party were certain the two wouldn't make it to base camp. After being abandoned twice over the span of 14 hours, Weathers crawled into Camp 4 on his own. Now that really sucks. You think you're going to die. Then a rescue party comes. But they take off and they leave you behind. So you think you're going to die again. When a second rescue party comes along, and they leave you behind as well. Yashuko Namba died from exhaustion and exposure all alone on the side of the mountain. There are over 250 bodies still remaining on Everest, giving it the claim to the world's title of the largest open-air graveyard. While most deaths occur due to avalanches, falls, and exposure to the harsh climate, the area known as the death zone holds a terribly high body count and comes with its own unique set of problems. The death zone is commonly known as the area above 26,000 feet. When the human body enters this altitude, it slowly starts to die. Then it becomes a race against the clock for climbers to make it from this mark to the peak and back again before their body fails them. Since oxygen at this level is only a third of what it is at sea level, the climbers may find themselves sluggish, disoriented, and fatigued. The pressure makes weight feel 10 times heavier and causes extreme distress on your organs. Because of these severe effects, climbers usually only have a window of about 48 hours inside the death zone and are strongly urged to use supplemental oxygen at all times. If someone dies on Everest, it's almost impossible to retrieve their body, especially in the death zone, due to the unbearable weather conditions, severe lack of oxygen, pressure on dead weight, and the fact that many bodies are completely frozen to the mountain face. Most corpses are left exactly as they fall. Attempts are sometimes made to retrieve the body of a loved one, but those expeditions can cost upwards of $25,000, and they're extremely dangerous for the people involved. Overall, the standard protocol is to simply let these figures, frozen in the final moments of death, become a permanent addition to the rocky terrain. It would make sense that the mountain's nickname is Everest. A long time ago, a giant ice sheet decided it wanted to be over there being south of where it is. Since where it was cold, and there wasn't much to look at besides ice, and more ice, and even more ice. So the giant ice sheet began to push its way along without a care for anything in its way. If you had been living in the area this ice sheet was plowing up, you would have been convinced it was destroying the property value of the planet. Ah, but not so. The land plowed away by this traveling ice sheet became quite valuable. Places known today as the Great Lakes and Lake Champlain. Just across the pond, the ice had been busy tearing up the countryside and formed the Scottish lochs. The word loch means lake, but don't go around calling them Lake Ness. You'll get run out of town. So today, we have nice big aquatic resorts to visit and have some fun. You can bask in the sun if the temperature ever gets up high enough, and maybe go for a swim. But keep your eyes on the water around you. You just might get to see the most famous cryptid on the planet. Loch Ness is also called Loch Nes. It is a large, deep, freshwater loch in the Scottish Highlands, extending from approximately 23 miles southwest of Inverness. Its surface is 52 feet above sea level. Loch Ness is best known for the sightings of the Loch Nes Monster, also affectionately known as Nessie. It is connected at the southern end by the River Oik and a section of the Caledonian Canal to Loch Oik. At the northern end, there is the Bona Narrows, which open out into Loch Duchfor, which feeds the River Ness, and a further section of canal to Inverness. It is one of a series of interconnected murky bodies of water in Scotland. Its water visibility is exceptionally low due to the high peat content in the surrounding soil. Loch Ness is the second largest Scottish loch by surface area at 22 square miles, second to Loch Lomond. But due to its great depth, it is the largest by volume in the British Isles. Its deepest point is 755 feet, making it the second deepest loch in Scotland after Loch Morar. A 2016 survey may have discovered a crevasse that pushes the depths to 889 feet. It contains more fresh water than all of the lakes in England and Wales combined. The scholars of Loch Ness Monster found a dozen references to Nessie in Scottish history, dating back to around AD 500, when local Picts carved a strange aquatic creature into a standing stone near Loch Ness. The carving looks more like a serpent than a plesiosaur, but the image is still worth noting. The earliest written reference to the monster in Loch Ness is a 7th century biography of St. Columba, the Irish missionary who introduced Christianity to the Scotland. In 565, according to a biographer, Columba was on his way to visit the king of the northern Picts near Inverness when he stopped at Loch Ness to confront a beast that had been killing people in the lake. Seeing a large beast about to attack another man, Columba intervened, invoked the name of God, and he commanded the creature to go back with all speed. The monster retreated and never killed another man, as far as we know. 1933, a road was completed along the Loch Ness shore to the west side, affording drivers a clear view of the loch. After that, April 1933, a sighting was reported in the local paper. Then, May 2nd, interest steadily grew, especially after another couple claimed to have seen the beast, only on land, crossing the shore road. A couple were driving along the new road when they spotted a large black creature moving across the pavement away from the water. This makes me wonder why so many skeptics jump up and down saying there's not enough food in the loch to support a creature that big, or it can't get in and out of the loch since the river is too shallow. The creature was seen crossing a road. Maybe he was looking for that chicken. Or can it live on dry land and therefore it can reach the ocean without passing through any of the rivers? That same year, one of the first photographs to be taken of the monster was snapped by a British aluminum company worker, Mr. Hugh Gray, near Foyers. It shows something writhing in the water that looks like the creature, creating a considerable disturbance. He only saw part of the animal, which he estimated to be about 40 feet long, which included a thick, rounded back and also a muscular long tail. Unfortunately, the photo is blurry, which you might call a blob ness, kind of like a blob squatch, only a different animal or person. Considering the year, having to try to hold a camera steady while watching a giant monster thrash about in front of you is quite a feat. He only got the one photo. On the 5th of January 1934, a motorcyclist almost collided with the monster as he was returning home from Inverness. Once again, the creature was on land. It was around 1 in the morning, and there was a full moon. This gave the motorcycle rider a good look at his near accident. Mr. Grant was coming from Inverness, heading south, approaching Abriachon, which is located to the northwest end of the loch. He saw a large shape on the right side of the road. As he got closer to the object, he saw a small head attached to a long neck. The animal turned and looked at Grant. Quickly it crossed the road, heading back to the loch. Well, Mr. Grant had slammed on his brakes and skidded to a stop. The creature slipped into the water as Mr. Grant approached the water's edge, and he watched the ripples form on the surface as the monster dove under and vanished. And with that, it's time for another break, so we're going to play a couple commercials. I'm going to drink some coffee and try and figure out where everything is at this new studio. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Iturbide, Suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arkanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arkanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to the show. It's amazing how many times this creature, known as the Loch Ness Monster, has actually been spotted on land and not just in the water. The first movie about the monster was in 1934. It was called The Secret of the Loch. It showed some of the locals claiming that they've always known the monster was there. One of the locals says the creature hatched from a prehistoric egg after being disturbed by the road construction. This sounds like a nice way to explain the plesiosaur-shaped monster most folks want to be Nessie, but the most common shape seen is more like a serpent than a dinosaur. Several British newspapers sent reporters to Scotland, including the Daily Mail, which hired a big game hunter, Marmaduke Wetherall, to capture the beast. He was offered a hefty sum to come back with evidence the monster was real. After a few days searching the loch, Wetherall reported finding footprints of a large four-legged animal. In response, the Daily Mail carried a dramatic headline, "Monster of Loch Ness is not legend but a fact." The scores of tourists descended on Loch Ness, and they sat in boats or deck chairs waiting for an appearance by the beast. The plaster casts of the footprints were sent to the British Natural History Museum, which reported that the tracks were those of a hippopotamus, specifically one hippopotamus foot used over and over, which was probably stuffed. To add to this, Wetherall just happened to own a stuffed hippopotamus foot. Don't we all? The hoax temporarily deflated Loch Ness Monster mania, but stories of sightings continued coming in and managed to keep the legend alive. April 1934, the most famous photograph was obtained by a London surgeon as he headed towards Inverness along the new road. This would become known as the surgeon's photo. According to Christian Sperling, the story goes like this. Wetherall wasn't happy about being found out and losing his reward money, so he is supposed to have come up with a scheme to make the Daily Mail look bad. Here is what is supposed to have happened. Marmaduke Wetherall contacted a friend of his, Dr. Robert Keith Wilson, a.k.a. the surgeon, and asked him to help out by laying claim to some photos of the supposed monster that Wetherall was about to create. The monster was a toy submarine with a cardboard cutout that resembled what folks would think was Nessie. Wetherall and Sperling went to Loch Ness and they staged the photos. They took 4, but 2 didn't turn out, and 1 is still missing. The one good image was taken to the surgeon for its release. Dr. Wilson contacted the Daily Mail and sold them the world-famous photo that has been shown on every TV show about Loch Ness, as well as every book on cryptozoology and magazine on the planet. Then the big plan was for Wetherall to drop the hammer on the Daily Mail by showing how dumb they were for printing a toy submarine with a cardboard dinosaur. But he never did. Wetherall never tried to expose the photo as a fake. If his whole reason for making the fake photo of Nessie was to get even with the Daily Mail, why did he never do so? It wasn't until 1994 that Christian Sperling said he was in on the hoax and it was all just a scam. Dr. Wilson has stuck to his story until his death in 2001. So who do you believe? Wetherall never claimed anything to do with the photograph. Christian Sperling had no connection to the Nessie photo until he said he was in on it. Dr. Wilson said he took the photo and it was genuine. This is a lot like the movie of Patty, taken by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. It wasn't until Roger Patterson had died that people began claiming they were there, and it was just a monkey suit. 13 people have come forward to say that they were the one in the suit. It must have been really crowded in there, and not a single one has explained why Roger Patterson would have built a female Bigfoot suit. So, is the surgeon's photo a fake or not? It does look a little hokey. The angle just seems off and the waves are a bit big for the size of the creature. All I can say is, I wasn't there, so I don't really know. When Christian Sperling made his last bid for fame, few enthusiasts even took time to read his newspaper article. The only folks who took the confession to heart were the ones that didn't believe in the creature to begin with. Aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale disputes the claim that the photo is a hoax in his book, Loch Ness Monster, after reportedly extensive study of the photograph from a number of angles. Upon really close examination, there are certain rather obscure features in the photo which have a profound significance, Dinsdale had said. He'd had his own sighting in 1960 when he was able to capture the monster on film. Now, getting back to the sightings, June 1934, a young girl from Fort Augustus at the southwest end of the loch was employed as a maid in one of the large houses close to the abbey. At around 6:30 in the morning, the young girl was looking out the window down at the loch. She saw, on the shore, one of the biggest animals she had ever seen in her life. It was about 200 yards from her. Her description was similar to those of the others. Kind of a giraffe-like neck, a small head, and skin kind of like an elephant, and on the front were 2 very short forelegs or flippers. She watched it for about 20 minutes, then it re-entered the water and disappeared. Why didn't she take a photograph? Back in 1934, a camera wasn't something that everybody had. They were expensive. Her being a maid, she couldn't have afforded such a luxury item. As for the 20 minutes of viewing, I would guess it was more like 5 or maybe 10. When truly extraordinary things are happening, time becomes somewhat of an anomaly. Still, this is number 3 sighting of the Loch Ness Monster on land. There were a number of privately funded investigations, most of which were not successful. No matter where your heart is, you gotta eat. When you run out of money, you stop looking for Nessie and you go back to work. There was one expedition that did have a degree of success. It was led by Sir Edward Mountain in July 1934. During that period of research, the investigation, he obtained 5 still pictures of the monster. The photos were taken from a long way off, and they're not too distinct. You can see that there is a shape in the water, but not many details. Sir Edward had seen the monster as well as some of the members of his team. The team had a movie camera, and they'd also gotten some footage of it as well. Then, as the threat of war with Germany grew, most people stopped looking for Nessie. They were all too busy looking for Nazis instead. Loch Ness fell under the control of the British Navy, who made it difficult to stand around looking for sea monsters. Anyone spotted on the shore would have been questioned as to what they were doing, and then they would have been told to move on. However, if your job was to stand nearby watching for Germans, then you had a good chance of seeing something. Mr. C.B. Farrell was a member of the Royal Observation Corps, watching for enemy bombers. Instead of enemy planes, he spotted the monster as it moved through the water. It looked to be 20 or 30 feet long. The head stood upright, maybe 4 or 5 feet above the water. It had huge eyes and something that looked like a fin. It submerged soon after he had spotted it. When the war came to an end and people were able to get back to their lives, instead of watching for enemy planes, you could get back to watching for UFOs or the Loch Ness Monster. 1951, a new photograph appeared, which to some confirmed the existence of the monster. July 14th at around 6:30 in the morning, Mr. Lachlan Stewart, a woodcutter employed by the Forestry Commission, saw something large moving out on the lake. Stewart and his friend ran down to the water's edge. From there, about 50 yards away, they saw 3 humps, each about 5 feet long, moving at a fast pace through the water. Mr. Stewart had picked up a small camera before leaving his house, so he took a photograph. As he stood there winding the film, a small head and a long neck appeared in front of the first hump. The monster turned and headed towards the center of the loch, and with a lot of splashing, it swam off, dived headfirst 300 yards from shore. Mr. Stewart estimated the length of the head and the neck to be about 6 feet, and the body about 15 to 20 feet. He noticed a commotion in the water behind the beast, which suggested to him the movement of a tail. December 1954, another sighting of sorts was made on board a fishing boat, the Rival 3. The something passed beneath the vessel and was captured on a graphical recorder. The recorder showed a large object at the depth of around 480 feet. This was an unknown creature, and it kept up with the boat for about a half a mile before it disappeared. 1955, one of the most intriguing photographs was captured by Peter McNabb. He had stopped his car in order to take a photograph of Urquhart Castle. As he was lining up the shot, he saw something in the water just to the left of his target. He swung the camera enough to catch a large, dark thing moving through the water. It looks as if it had 2 humps above the water, and then the creature is submerged. May 24th, 1960, a member of the Northern Naturalist Organization, Peter O'Connor from Gateshead, Durham, had a sighting. He was standing in the garden of the Foyers Hotel. He and a number of other guests saw the creature at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At first, he thought it was a rowboat, maybe 200 yards from shore. Using his binoculars, he could see a brown-colored object, not sure what it was, which was slowly sinking beneath the water. 3 days later, Mr. O'Connor encountered the monster again, between 6 and 6:30 in the morning. He was walking along the shore beside Foyer's Bay, and the monster came gliding into view from around the headland. He waded into the water up to his waist in order to get a better view. Now, I'll bet that was cold. The water in Loch Ness is always cold. The creature's head looked kind of like the head of a sheep, mounted on a long, muscular neck. Its skin looked smooth, kind of like a seal. As he turned and yelled to his friends and then turned back and took a photograph. The photo looks like an upside-down boat with a neck stretched out from it. The creature vanished under the water. The next few sightings come from the website www.nessie.co.uk. In 1973, an interesting sighting was reported by Mr. Jenkins of Point Clare, Invermorston. Mr. Jenkins had a head-neck sighting in the close-range observation. This is what Mr. Jenkins said. He lived in a house which is 12 yards above the surface level of Loch Ness. On Saturday 10th November 1973, at about 11:45, he tried to start a tractor which had been stuck for some weeks on a piece of rough ground sloping down to the loch edge to partially built jetty. It was a cold, slightly damp day, with a strong southwesterly wind on the surface, giving a heavy swell with waves over 2 feet. Mr. Jenkins used an engine chemical, known as ether, to start the tractor, and as the tractor did not have a silencer or muffler, there was an explosive noise, so loud that his wife heard it inside the house, despite all the windows being double glazed. Immediately after the noise of the starter, Mr. Jenkins heard a very loud splash, which he described as the impact splash, as if something very heavy had been thrown into the water. It was a single noise and was not followed by any further splashing. Being the impression someone must have thrown a heavy object into the water, he got down from the tractor and walked around it and had a good look along the shoreline. He then went back to the tractor, and 2 minutes after hearing the splash, he noticed in the water 5 yards of the end of the jetty a ring of concentric circles showing despite the waves. While he was looking, a little to his left, an animal emerged quietly and smoothly, the distance from the observer being about 45 yards. In a northeasterly direction parallel to the shore. Then it submerged straight down. Throughout, the object maintained a rigid pole-like posture, and its motion through the water was very smooth, with no apparent sign of any jerky movement. The head and neck were slate black, quite rigid, and about 9 inches in diameter. He observed a slit kind of mouth, what appeared to be some large scales on the top of the head, but not the neck, and above the mouth an eye or possibly a vent. The eye was quite tiny in proportion to the mouth. When the object rose out of the water, it formed an angle of about 80 degrees to the water, but when it started to move and throughout the movement, it formed a 60-degree angle. There was no sign of any fins, horns, or other parts. The water at this point is estimated to be about 10 or 20 feet deep. Now, once again, it's time for another break for commercials and give me a chance to drink some more coffee. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Eaterby Day, Suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanelza Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanelza Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to the show. Now, in September 1996, this sighting was made by Frank Meyer of Cincinnati, Ohio. These are his own words. As someone with scientific education, physics, I will not believe in anything I don't know for sure. But I was on Loch Ness for 4 days in 1996, during the first day of September with 4 relatives. We saw something we could not quite explain. We had rented a motor cruiser to travel on the Caledonian Canal for 2 weeks. We spent one night at Foyer's Pier. The weather had been fine in the evening, and the loch was very quiet in the morning. Practically no waves at all, clear weather. Around 8:45 a.m., I noticed something like the trunk of a large tree floating motionless just under the surface, about 100 meters in the direction of Urquhart Castle. My 4 fellows, boaters, saw it too. After I asked them what it was, I didn't move for at least 15 minutes. It didn't move for at least 15 minutes. Well, one of us thought it had moved slightly. We speculated what it could be. We watched it with binoculars, which revealed that it was not a single blob of darkness, but had limb-like structures, as if it really was just a dead tree. But nobody took a single photo. I still can't believe it. Finally, we took off to visit Urquhart Castle. I took a course that would take us close to the point of the mysterious object. Due to the position of the steering wheel, I could not see it during the beginning of the approach, and relied on others to take a close look. But when we got there, nothing was visible. Not only that, nobody had actually seen it disappear. One moment it had been there, a moment later it was gone without a trace. It was obviously no tree. Was it one of the almost stationary zones of rippled water that can occur on lakes due to wind and current? It was so isolated. One dark spot in a whole totally quiet surrounding, and it stayed unchanged for 15 minutes or more. And it was darker than the normal shadow. To me, that explanation seemed practically impossible. The same reason excluded a cloud shadow. For a mirage, it was not far enough, and one thing I am absolutely sure of, it was under the surface. The only thing I can think of as a possible explanation is a thin, floating layer of dark particles slowly collected overnight by the current of the Foyer's Bay and the open loch, clearly visible only because of the flat viewing angle. But then, why didn't it disappear gradually when we approached the spot? Steve Alton, the author, came up with a new slant on the monster when he said it was a langur eel. In his book, The Loch, released in 2010, he does a good job of making his case. If you haven't read his book, you can get it where else at Amazon.com. Now, it is a work of fiction, but it's still a very good book, and I enjoyed it. July 2016, what was reported as the monster remains washed ashore. Folks got all excited and began saying Nessie was dead, and that was that. Well, I'm no biologist, but the remains looked more like a deer to me than a sea monster. That and the fact that the remains looked as if somebody had killed it and partially eaten it. Something big would have had to have been in the water in that fight. So, unless there's some other monster living in Loch Ness, then this looks more like it was just a deer. September of the same year, what was called some solid proof of the Loch Ness was photographed. The image looks like a serpent of some kind undulating through the water. Now, there are seal in Loch Ness, and this could have been a bunch of seals playing around in the water. Depending on whether you believe in the monster, it will change how you see the photograph. I tried blowing the photo up, but it only got pixelated. If this is Nessie, it's one heck of a good image. A whiskey warehouse worker named Ian Bremner snapped this photo. Those people will naturally accuse him of drinking too much and seeing things. These are the same folks that accuse everyone who sees anything as either being drunk or crazy. Bremner said he was trying to photograph some red deer, but instead found what he says could be Nessie having an afternoon swim. This is the first time I've ever seen Nessie in the loch. I would be amazed if I was the first one to find her, Bremner had said. He snapped the photo on a Saturday afternoon between the villages of Doris and Inverfargigan in Scotland. Inverfargigan. Yes, it's one of those Scottish words that those of us in the United States shouldn't even try to pronounce. Bremner told the outlet he's a bit of a skeptic about Nessie, but when he saw his own photo, he found himself to becoming a believer. Now, the Loch Ness Monster has been declared missing by its official recorder, admitting he is worried that there have been no sightings of her for 8 months. Gary Campbell, keeper of the official Loch Ness Monster sighting register, said concerns were raised following a spike in the number of reported appearances in the 2016. Once again, most people looking for the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie, are focusing all their attention on the water. Maybe they should try looking along the shoreline. There could be a cave or an opening that the monster calls home. If you'd like to help look for Nessie, but you don't feel like flying across the pond, you could go to lochness.co.uk, where you can watch a closed-circuit TV, and maybe you'll get lucky that way. I would love to go to Loch Ness and have a look for the creature, but I don't fly. And until somebody builds a highway from here to there, I'm not likely to go. And there's a reason I don't fly, and it has nothing to do with being afraid of flying. It has to do with an organization that we fondly refer to here in the United States as the NSA. Not the NSA. The TSA, I'm sorry. TSA, thousands standing around doing nothing. Way back, when I still worked for a living, I was flying out to California as a Border Patrol agent. Because I was on duty, and because I did not want to lose any of my valuable equipment, I was flying armed. And this was right after 9/11, so I was flying armed. When I went to the airport, checked in, no problem. Told them I'm a Border Patrol agent, here's my ID, I'm carrying a weapon. They said, go right ahead. Got on the plane, I flew to Dallas. Dallas, no problem. Nobody cared that I was an agent carrying a gun on board a plane. In fact, I believe most people were rather happy I was there. Had to fly out to LAX, which is in California, which is hopefully the last time I ever go to California. I had to fly from LAX to El Centro, and for some mysterious reason that nobody can explain, there's no way to get from one terminal to the other without exiting the building. So I had to walk outside, walk along the hot sidewalk, go to the next terminal over, and then go back in through security. No problem. Walk up to the gal at the x-ray machine, I tell her I'm a Border Patrol agent, I show her my ID, and I tell her I'm flying armed. And she said, no problem, go right ahead. Walk down this hallway, and a gentleman in a blue suit coat stops me and tells me I can't walk through there. I showed him my ID. I told him I'm a Border Patrol agent and I am flying armed. He looked at me, and I could see nothing but a vacant stare in his eyes as he told me that I couldn't walk through that hallway. I had to go through security. So I told him, okay, fine, I'll go through security, but I'll set off the metal detector. He got this shocked look on his face. Why will you set off the security? He said. I told him, because I'm carrying my weapon, and I showed him my ID. And he said, why are you carrying a weapon? And I literally turned and I looked at my ID to make sure that I was holding it in my hand. And I showed it to him, and I said, I am a Border Patrol agent. I am carrying my duty weapon. And I looked him in the eye, and all I could see was a vacant look. He thought about it for several minutes, and then he told me I had to go through security. Fine, sure, I'll go through security. So I turned around and walked back to the security gal. She tells me, oh, no, you don't come through here. You'll set off the alarm. And I says, well, tell that joker that. I think I called him a joker. I might have used another term for the man. She goes over and she gets in about a 5-minute discussion with this TSA agent about whether or not I had to go through security. Federal agent, proper ID, carrying a weapon. Oh, no, might be a terrorist too. After 5 minutes discussing whether or not I should go through security with this TSA agent, the woman comes back to me with a concerned look on her face, and she tells me that they've come to an agreement. I did not have to go through security, being a federal agent. However, my backpack had to go through, in case I had a bomb or something. I did not have a bomb in my backpack. I had boxes of bullets. I had my two-way radio. I had my flashlight. I had all kinds of things in there that I did not want to lose while flying from point A to point B. I thought this is going to be interesting. I slapped my backpack down on that conveyor belt that led to the x-ray machine, and then I ran around to the other side as fast as I could go. I wanted to see the look on the guy's face who didn't know what was going on as my backpack cleared that x-ray machine. I saw it enter the machine, and then I saw this look on the guy's face as he realized that there's a backpack with bullets, flashlight, radio, all kinds of things that aren't supposed to normally be carried on an airplane, and he tried to hit the panic button. Fortunately, the young woman in charge of the place managed to stop him, and eventually I was allowed to get on the plane after about a 30-minute delay. And as I was getting on board the plane flying to El Centro, I said to myself, this is the last time I'm ever going to fly until TSA has been removed from the equation. So, until we no longer have to deal with those people at the airport, I will not be flying. So therefore, any attempt on my part to go looking for the Loch Ness Monster is going to have to pretty much be me sitting in front of my computer, staring at lochness.co.uk and hoping that the creature makes its appearance on TV. I hope you found tonight's show thrilling and informative. If you'd like to contact us, the email address is strangethangs@arcanasa.com. That's ARCANASA. Or just look for Strange Things with Chris James on Facebook. You can contact me there. Next Saturday, we'll be looking into some strange structures found all over the world, so don't forget to tune in next Saturday as well.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder 3. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?